questions?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, can I put some questions to our Director of Planning and Environment first before we
Well, before the motion, okay.
And I've numbered them, so I'll keep to my task.
How many?
There are 7, but some are moved. Okay. We had a lot of information come through in the open forum and I have been taking notes. So I wanted to cover some of these. In terms of the statement about the underestimation of the vehicles, will it make any changes if we were to upgrade the vehicle numbers to 2 or 3? Would there be any need to change any of the proposed infrastructure in terms of the road infrastructure?
Yeah. Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, I don't think so. So the proposal has been to Transport for New South Wales as Barton Highway a state road. They've indicated in their submission that the intersection is more than capable of handling the volume of traffic, and the view of the council, the assessment is that Hillview Drive is the same.
And so the turning lane, you believe the slip lane is unnecessary as part of
It hasn't been conditioned, so.
Okay. As part of any development on that side of the road, I would certainly want to see, in addition to our motion, that we continue our advocacy to TF New South Wales for a pedestrian crossing across the Barton Highway. There is a request from the submissions to check whether a bus stop will be made a provision by TF New South Wales.
So in the submission from Transport for New South Wales, what they've said in the conditions is the council may like to consider these matters. In terms of a bus stop, my understanding is that there's one on either side of the Barton Highway, and I don't think it's appropriate for another one bus stop.
An entry feature, was that discussed with the developer?
No, it hasn't been discussed with the developer, but I have discussed it with the development engineer, and if council sees fit, then yeah, that could be included.
Now, I have no issue with the green space given it's smack bang up against the rec ground, but the footpath connecting it to the rec ground, is there any provision currently to get access to that? Because, I mean, I don't think we accept that, 37 lots requires any massive infrastructure. I think Murray for a long time had people just literally using the roads until the numbers were up enough. I'm talking, Hercules Street, for example. But where it connects to the rec grounds, what could be possibly requested of the developer in that?
So, through you, Mr. Mayor, my understanding from the 2018 development application is that it included the footpath. It was an area of contention in terms of the assessment of the development application. In discussions with the applicant, is that they have decided not to propose that in this current development application before council. So they're asking you to consider it as it is at the moment. There is provision through the subdivision. There's an access way for council to get through to the sort of pump station, and there is provision there for a footpath as well. So there would be a footpath through to essentially the council-owned land. Mm-hmm. I think that if council is of a mind that they would like to consider the developer to consider a further footpath through the recreation grounds, that then maybe that's an issue for deferring the application tonight. But council is being asked to consider this development application as it is before them.
Through Mr. Mayor, it sounds like there's been a shift in community views on this issue.
And given the high turnover of residents in Murray Bateman, that's completely understandable.
Yeah, and maybe I should just note, it wasn't picked up in the Murray Bateman rec ground strategy either.
On that basis, I think let's do it once and let's do it right. I would like to defer the assessment of this development so that we can include the pedestrian access to the rec ground and entry feature as part of.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, why defer it? Why not add them to the deferred conditions that as part of the motion? So the deferred commencement, it should be something like that. The deferred commencement development consent be issued for the DA. with the following additions.
Thank you for your assistant CEO, that's where we pay him.
Otherwise, it's another 4 weeks for anyone to get a decision.
Exactly. That's why I had a big sigh before suggesting it. All right. With your patience, fellow councillors, I'd like to move the recommendation as it is with the following inclusion, that the inclusion of the footpath, the inclusion of the entry feature, as well as the stated condition for the deferment, deferred consent for the stated reasons, which was the diesel refueling situation and the soil testing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Can we have a second first? So it's got to be seconded before. Thank you. Away you go, Councillor Cameron.
Sorry, before it was seconded, I should have got in. Can we be a bit more specific about the footpath? I think in the motion, because we know what we're talking about here, it may not come across like that. So can we be a bit more specific what you're talking about?
So,
Yeah.
as I understand it, Mr. Mayor, is that you're looking for a footpath connection from a footbridge.
Yeah.
To the footbridge to the Barton Highway through the park. That's my understanding.
Is that your understanding? I thought it was.
Well, otherwise, where does it go to?
To the rec ground.
Yeah, to the rec ground.
So if you put it to the rec ground, all you're doing is ending the footpath immediately at the edge of the rec ground.
Correct, because anything further on the other side has to be, that's our land.
Yeah, but you can also ask developers to do things off their site
Wow.
as part of a development if you think there is a need, but it hasn't been
It goes
assessed.
through our land. Path has to go through our land.
So we're clear on
Alright.
Sometimes you don't know that you're Oliver and you can ask for some more.
Yes, just a question through the General Manager to Director of Planning. Hillview Acreage have raised a number of concerns, particularly about stormwater and access to Hillview Drive. And I get from what's been stated, it's basically about their understanding of the lack of detail that's available to them. Are we able to address that in this particular DA?
So, through you, Mr. Mayor. It's not normal practice for applicants to provide detailed engineering designs as part of development applications, and council regularly considers development applications without that information. I have reviewed the information that's been submitted. There are stormwater documentation, there is documentation around flooding, there is land contamination assessments done. So all of the work has been done. I will note that the presentation that was made tonight by that particular party, they didn't raise these issues in their initial submission to council in 2021. If the application was deficient in information, it wouldn't be coming to council for determination, and I'm satisfied with the level of assessment that's been completed and the information that's been submitted.
Any further questions? Councillor Cameron?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, to the Director of Planning. I noticed in draft condition 26 that we have a 1.5 metre footpath on all new proposed roads. Is that on both sides of the roads? Is that all through the development?
I would have to take that on notice, Councillor Cameron.
That's fine.
However, you would normally have it on one side of the road,
Right, that's
not
what I thought.
necessarily on both sides.
Just checking what does footpaths mean? I'm getting very interested in footpaths like drainage, which is coming up, don't worry. The other one that I wanted to ask about, I noticed that there seems to be some nice things trying to happen in regards to bird nests being removed and even animals perhaps in the creek. I think it's in the creek or in
It's a dam.
Who from council will monitor this process?
Through you, Mr Mayor. No, it won't be me. Through you, Mr Mayor. Look, unless there's a compliance issue undertaken, once they do the subdivision work certificates, their project manager monitors the work and compliance with the consent. And if there's a compliance issue, if it's raised with council, we may consider investigating.
I was just going to say that moving bird nests to a safer area seems a bit ambitious to me.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the recommendation of their biodiversity report.
Thank you.
Let's just.
We might just want to add the word.
It's not unusual.
Isn't it?
You can try.
Yeah, thank you. Otherwise it looks like we're adding something that really shouldn't be there. Thank you.
Okay, any further speakers for it? Councillor.
Is there sewage and water going on these blocks or not?
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, there is. Yep, it's all conditioned in the draft consent.
And Julie, will these blocks need to have tanks as well?
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, and that's conditioned in the consent and will be a covenant on the lots if they're created.
Councillor Cameron.
Have you spoken for? You need to speak.
Just been moved and seconded. I don't think anyone's spoken for or against.
That's a straight. That's all clear. That's all clear.
Well, I want to speak against the recommendation. Okay, maybe we'd like to come back in. Okay, in regard to this development, and we've heard a lot of people talk about a lot of issues, and I'm trying to keep it down to a small number because I think a lot of issues have been raised. On the positive side, I think the mention of the size of the blocks is a positive, and I think we should be pleased that they're quite a good size. Also, the other thing that hasn't been mentioned tonight is the protection of the historic house, which I think is very valuable and should be commended in regard to this development. However, of course, there's a few negatives from my point of view. The first is the Barton Highway, and I think with the Barton Highway duplication, it's envisaged to be very close to this development. And I find it rather strange that one of the comments made about talking about the Barton Highway duplication, obviously stage 3, is this comment is preemptive to say the least, i.e. basically saying we shouldn't be discussing this because it's a long way off. Well, it may be a long way off, but I think all of us dream that it's going to happen. And I think we should be taking it into consideration, seeing that 16 blocks are going to be, fairly directly affected by the fire. And whether or not the noise reduction ideas will work, we have to hope for the best, I could imagine. But having seen some of the things put up for near freeways, etc., they don't often work that well. And I would just like to make the point that this development has been in the works for a long time. I think about 15, 16 years. I think I remember sitting up the back here about 5 years ago, and the council voted very much against the proposal that was put up there, all but one person saying it was a good idea. So things do change, as you say. I think the LEP wouldn't have envisaged that we were going to have stage 3 of a duplicated highway there as well. The second point I'd like to make is drainage. As I said, I've come into it, and I like drainage. But the reason why I like to bring up the issue of drainage is that I've dealt with a number of people in Yass who have been let down by developers, particularly in the current weather in August last year, but even before that, and then demand council do something about it. And, our answer as a council is not that positive. We try and do what we can, but it's really the fact that the initial drainage stuff wasn't done properly. And, there's some very obvious ones that are about that. So I'm particularly concerned about the drainage issue. One of the submissions against the proposal, making comment on the proposal, talked about, sounded like an experienced person was talking about going up Hillview Road a lot and seeing flooded areas in that situation which is being developed, particularly blocks 10 to 21, which is in fact a total of 12 blocks. And that may be impacted by flooding. I also think that, we're using the 1 in 100 year flooding concept, and from my point of view, you don't have to talk to the people in Lismore to say that 1 in 100 years doesn't work that well. So I'm really interested in the issue of drainage. Some of the people that I've been talking to in Yass, they had a reasonable sized yard, so they put in a swimming pool at the back, 2 or 3 people out of a line of about 12, keep getting filled up with mud coming down from the flood from the thing. So, and their concern is, okay, we can tackle it and get rid of it, but the question that keeps on coming up in their minds is who's going to pay for it, because the insurance keeps on going up in regard to their specific property. And the other thing that I mentioned about drainage is draft condition 36, which says, we're after compliance with flood planning controls. Okay, that's good. We want to see that happen. But it also talks about we must include furnished floor levels for flood affected lots. Now, I don't quite know what that means, but it sounds like to me, having discussed this with a development in Sutton last time, that you're putting the floor level of the building up above what could be a flood level. I just hope they're not sort of, having to be the size of, say, Brisbane houses, which have the under part completely above the ground. The final thing that I'd just like to mention in regard to the negatives is trees. And I think people have talked about open space within the particular facility. That is a worry, but I don't think we can overstate the importance of trees in a time of climate change. And as a member of the Greens, I think trees have got to be respected as much as possible. And I think we may not be doing a very good job. What it basically says in the thing that in our report, however, a large proportion of the vegetation will be removed or affected. And we're talking about 299 trees. Granted, most of them are not natives, but they are still trees and they are still doing a job in regard to climate change. So that's another worry from my point of view. Finally, to sum up, it appears that residential development in Murrum Bateman is done without an overall plan, and people have mentioned that there are developments heading towards Canberra that have suddenly sprung up and getting bigger, some of them. And I think we have to be mindful that the community is demanding having a plan put in place quickly. Otherwise, we're just going to keep on having these sort of developments occurring all over the place without any overall plan and a lack of infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cameron. Any speakers for the motion? Happy to vote on the Councillor Jones?
I'm just giving everyone a chance to put their say. I'll just start with Councillor Cameron's last point while it's all fresh in your mind. There's a lot of anxiety in Murrum Bateman for more planning. And I understand why. It's a growing community. Being on the ground at the new school already, the struggles with car parking that's been expressed by parents and the community is reflective of perhaps the Department of Education's choice more than anything the council can do. However, I think it's poignant to note that we're a small rural council with a very small planning team that's already under a lot of pressure. We shouldn't be asking for things before we need them, because they won't be fresh when we do need them. What is that time? The time for that is most likely going to be when we have secured a secondary water source. Our planning team and executive team are aware of what the latent capacity for water in Murrum Bateman is and how much we can push that area around connection to water. And beyond that, it's rural residential. So I don't think we should be pushing too hard just yet to spend money on consultants. We all know you won't get out of there for under 100K if you've got a big master plan that you need doing for a large area. So I think we need to be prudent when it comes to that. Secondly, and the rest all 30. 30? I know a lot more than that. Well, if you do it too many times, it'll The other thing that I wanted to touch on is the connectivity with the school in terms of crossing the Barton Highway. I think it's very much upon council to join forces with the school as soon as there is a registration of a child from this future development, or any hint of that. We should be pushing yet again for them to consider a Barton Highway pedestrian crossing, because it matters to have kids potentially trying to cross that highway. And the comments from the Department of Education is there's no need, that's not how children are going to access it. So we need to keep advocating and keep pushing, because there is already a need. There is a giant recreation ground right next to the Barton Highway, and all the other village aspects are across it. It's not rocket science. And I think this development application has the perfect opportunity to push it straight under their nose immediately, to say, hey, let's get onto it now, so that there is not a tragedy. Secondly, I support this DA as it stands today. I couldn't support it in its previous presentations, and I look forward to seeing all of the elements that are required in the deferred consent met. Thank you.
Okay, any further speakers for or against? Prepare to vote? Okay, we'll put the motion then. All those in favour? Those against? Councillor Cameron. Okay. The motion carried. 6.2, contaminated waste removal. Here's a recommendation. Would you like to move the recommendation? Councillor Butler, Councillor Burgess, any discussion? Councillor Cameron.
Yeah, just asking a question. I think we've discussed this on Monday, but how did the contamination get there? And I know it's probably an historic problem, but the problem that I have is if we don't know the answer to that, then we can't put in place necessarily a system to stop it happening again. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I can't provide an answer as to how those pilots got there, but the report indicates that they're intact and stable, which is not a bad thing. In terms of future risk, look, it is highly unlikely to happen. The waste transfer station have staff there who are monitoring what comes in and out of the waste transfer stations, and we don't accept asbestos, so it's unlikely to occur. It's more likely to occur as illegal dumping just sporadically around the LGA, so I'm not concerned in the future that this would happen again.
Another question through you, Mr. Mayor. Do we have to notify the EPA about this?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, not that I'm aware of. We will engage the appropriate consultants to undertake the testing and to give guidance around how to remove the piles.
And if they say we have to, through
you, Mr. Mayor, if we do need to consult the EPA, we will, but if we don't, we won't.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you for bearing with me, because I'm still not clear, particularly like for 120k needed to clean up what's been put at Binalong. So this is piles inside our transfer sites that have been dumped by people not stating what it is, just leaving it there, or we've accepted it and not done anything with it. I'm just unclear.
I just can't.
How this sits.
I just can't provide any advice around how the piles have come there. There might have been a period of time where you could access the transfer stations without staff being there.
Absolutely.
These things happen. What I'd recommend to council is that we just, whilst the piles are stable, they need to be dealt with.
It's just an inherited problem.
Historic.
Yeah.
Shouldn't we be keeping it then?
You want us to live together? Through Mr. Mayor, no. They are not licensed to be a storage facility for asbestos. It is better to remove it and send it to somewhere that is licensed. Then you do not have the problem. If you wanted to take asbestos, and this has been raised before, the issue is that we need to be a licensed asbestos receiving facility. And that would mean that every transfer station would need an EIS, and which would probably not just focus on the asbestos, it would focus on all of the operations. And I think you would be looking at several $1 million just to do the paperwork. It is cheaper to get it to an authorised receiver of asbestos rather than us trying to get into the business of storing asbestos.
Okay, I think we've worked that one out pretty well. I'll put the motion, all those in favour? Those against? Declare the motion carried. 6.3, Marlborough Transfer Station, automated pump. Councillor Burgess moved, seconded, Councillor Potter. Any discussion?
Question.
Remember?
It sounds like it's a very expensive pump. I presume that the staff have gone through a process of trying to get the cost down as much as possible, and I presume that this is hopefully state of the art and comes with a guarantee for about 20 years.
Mr. Mayor, the work will be subject to our procurement policy, so the quotes obtained, so this is an estimation of what it will cost. But it is about reducing the work health risk in the workplace, which is very important,
Yeah, very good.
and will allow the automation of the pump at the moment, which has to be operated manually.
Thank you. Any further questions? Ready to vote? I'll put the motion, all those in favour? Those against? Declare the motion carried. Yes, water improvement plant upgrade, item 6.4, Councillor Reid. Have a seconder, Councillor Bottom. Any discussion?
Through you,
Councillor Reid.
Mr. Mayor. This was maybe I'm an undue optimist, but as we know, we've had a change in state government. No, traditionally we've had challenges dealing with DPE and HAF. Just wondering if there's a chance that dealings with them can be more amicable, and maybe stages 2 and 3 could hopefully be implemented more quickly and with less, dare I say, opposition or obstructions.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, through some very extensive negotiations with the funding body and the state agency, got agreement that we need to prepare a business case for the entire complex, even though it isn't totally funded at this particular point in time. What the funding body has said is that they would prefer to see that rather than this incremental coming in with business case for each and every stage. So that's a win for us, even though it doesn't necessarily get us more money to do the stages that we want to do. There is through the Canberra JO, they're talking about setting up some meetings with new ministers, and we will certainly take the opportunity of raising with the water minister. And I know that the new minister has been and visited our water plant. But I think that the key thing that we would be looking for is a commitment to delivering the ultimate upgraded water treatment plant, not just incremental stages. So that's what we'll be advocating for when we get the chance to meet the minister.
Thank you, and good luck.
Councillor Cameron.
Not really a question, it's more of a comment. Part of it, I think that's great, but part of it, reading through the information, I think I saw somewhere stage 2 and 3, even if that happens, which is great, No design work should commence until after 2024. So we're really talking about if stage 2 and 3 eventually happens, we won't even be doing the design work until 2025, which probably means that another year or so after that, or half a year, you'll be starting to look at major changes to the water treatment. Am I right there?
Through you, partially. Stage 1, we've done and completed.
Yeah.
And the state agency has indicated that they want 12 months of testing of the water quality to see whether we should be moving towards stages 2 and 3. So we're bound by that. We've had to accept that that's the arrangement that they've put in place. They're the ones that, if we don't get their approval, the funding body will not release the money. What we've managed to do is do a stage 1A or a 2A, or whatever the name is, which is really to fix up some WHS issues associated with chemical storage, funding and the like, which don't do anything for the water quality, but it does provide a safer workplace for the staff. So that's the main focus of the next bit of work that we do. We've got the subject to the business case being provided. We've got the green light to basically go ahead with that work, but we do not have the go ahead to do any more detailed planning on stages 2 and 3, which are the ones that are going to deal with the other water quality issues that stage 1 doesn't deal with. So we unfortunately have to wait at this particular point in time, but again, we can always ask the minister, and when we meet them, if they're prepared to review that. I think that there's been some comments made in the elections that it's whatever it takes. So there's been some. There's been some promises, and I guess what we need to do is make sure we hold them to their promises. And a bit like last time, whatever it takes. In the election, that was certainly held to that commitment that they gave, and the community voted accordingly. So with the new minister, I think there is an opportunity to revisit some of the work that the old ground that we've gone over previously and bring them up to speed. They may still make the same decision that's already been made, or they may actually let us proceed in advance. So who knows?
Not a question, but a comment. I'm just looking at the report. Timeline. The timeline for major deliverables are as follows. In selection briefing paper, August 23. High-level concept design and site layout, September 23. Is that being too ambitious?
No. We've already basically engaged consultants that we'd already previously appointed, and we've sort of buried their contractual arrangements to basically. I mean, we didn't want to lose the corporate knowledge that they came through the first stage.
Yeah.
It made sense to actually engage them for this project. So they're already engaged. We're just waiting for the green light to proceed. So they're on standby to actually deliver by those timeframes. Those timeframes were developed with them. They're not just something that we've dreamed up. It's just about what they have the ability to deliver within that timeframe. Again, depends on what happens with the detail. Like with all project management plans, there can be delays that we haven't foreseen. But at this stage, that's the timeframe that we've got.
Thank you.
Okay, happy? I'll put the motion in. All those in favour? Those against? Declare the motion carried. Investment and borrowings report, item 6.5. Councillor Reid, moved. Councillor Reid, seconded. Councillor Abbey. Any discussion? Councillor Cameron.
Just a question. I think looking at the attachments, did I see that? Did I see 2.1 million to buy land for the water treatment plant? Is that?
The attachment with me, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. You want to come back to it?
I think it was,
Yeah,
Right.
through Mr. Mayor, we did have to acquire some land from the adjoining owner to increase the size of the footprint to include the extra, but I didn't think it was 2 million. I thought it was about 1 million.
My question is that it looks like 2.1 million was taken out to purchase that land, and I know it was it 1.2 million or something?
Yes, that's
The
right.
question is really what happened to the rest of the money? Does it go automatically back into
We may have
or was
actually,
that in a working fund?
yeah, look, we may have taken it out on the basis that we thought that may be the upper limit of what we might be able to negotiate. So anything that's not necessary would go back into the water fund.
Goes back into the, okay,
We can take that on notice.
okay, thank you.
okay. I'll put the motion in, all those in favour? Those against, declare the motion carried. 6.6, presentation of audited financial statements. There's a recommendation. Councillor Reid, Councillor Pothing. Seconded.
Through Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to make the comment in relation to the presentation we heard from Deloitte's.
Yeah.
I think the one thing that they didn't say was that the constant revolving door, their staff, is what, in my view, contributed to delay after delay with the audit process. I think that was the biggest factor in my mind of why we ended up having to ask for extension after extension. The Director of Corporate and myself basically put our foot down when we were given to, when we had the last extension we asked for to the 31st. They wanted us to actually make a further request, and we put our foot down and said, absolutely no way. If we miss the deadline, we miss the deadline, and that's a risk that we're prepared to take. I wasn't prepared to go and ask for a fourth extension for their inability to deliver what they should have done 6 months earlier. So that, you know, to me, that didn't come out in their response.
Twice.
And just on top of that, I can assure you, the audits are not doing our audit next time round. Ernst & Young are doing that, and we've already had some preliminary discussions about some of the challenges, and they seem to be a bit more receptive to our particular circumstances and seem to be prepared to work with us a lot more closely.
And through Mr. Mayor, they'll actually be on site as well.
Sorry, I missed
They will
that.
actually do the audit on site.
Which
Rather
firm,
than
which firm is
Ernst &
it?
Young.
I missed
EY, yes.
EY, yeah, okay.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, I think if Deloitte's had stated clearly that they're part of the culpability of that and what they had put in place to make sure it never happens again, would have, you know, made us much more amenable to the possibility of them doing it again.
Just remember, we actually get, they're appointed by the state, and we get allocated an agency to do our audit. We don't have a choice in the selection.
Okay, so how are we choosing to do it?
No, they were appointed by the audit office.
Also make a statement, please, Mr. Mayor. One of the comments that I'd like to highlight that David also made was that there were no significant findings or material statements for this audit.
That's exactly what we want to hear.
And the RFS issue,
Oh, yeah.
we already knew about that.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. Did anything going to happen about that?
Well, I think if you ask all the general managers around the ACT, the answer is yes, we're going to fight it.
Yeah.
And our view is that we don't have control over those assets.
Change of government may make a difference.
Yeah, we've got to hope.
Basically, all it needs is one clause in one act being deleted. And I think that's the simplest solution. And that's something that we will continue. I know the JO will continue to raise that with the incoming Treasurer and Minister for Local Government, because it is a disaster. It's pushing their assets onto our books and saying that we're responsible for them. No, I cannot go and get one of those big red trucks and go and deploy it somewhere else. If I could, I'd lock it up down at the depot.
Just go and sell it. Go and sell it.
Okay, happy to vote? I'll put the motion, all those in favour? Those against, declare the motion carried. 6.7, amended quarterly budget review statements. And there's a recommendation, Councillor Jones and Councillor Reid. Thank you. Any questions, any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion, all those in favour? Those against, declare the motion carried. 6.8, ROC non-voting council member.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to move this motion, and if Councillor Abbey is available and willing to make it to those quarterly meetings, no, he is of a financial mind. Putting
You have a seconder? Councillor Butler, thank you.
might do Councillor Abbey.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, reminds me of a proverb, I like proverbs. The proverb is, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Can I just more politely say that I was happy and I was nominated before by Jasmine to do it, but I had to say, in all honesty, it didn't engage my skill set, and I didn't really feel that I made an effective contribution, and so I graciously declined. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Abbey. Anyone else? Councillor Cameron.
Yeah, I'll nominate. I'll second it. Well, I'll nominate.
I'll third it.
So we'll do with the recommendation first, and then we'll.
We've changed it slightly to include.
Thank you. All right, no worries. I'll put the motion in. All those in favour? Those against? Looks like you've got another job, Councillor Cameron.
That's it. I saw you coming.
6.9. 6.10.
6.9.
6.9.
6.9 is the grants
Oh,
update.
sorry, yes, the grants update, 6.9. That's for information. Someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Abbey, Councillor Reid, any questions, any comments? Councillor Cameron.
A couple of quick comment, or a quick question. Maybe in the future, some of the grants, some of them are more of an allocation rather than a competitive grant, and maybe it might be worthwhile to have which ones are allocated and which ones are competitive grants that we've particularly won. The other one I just wanted to think about was, with the capital grants, the Riverbank Park Playground, valued 2 million. Was that a full grant of 2 million, or was it less than that? I think it was less than that.
Originally it was less, and I think it was bumped up.
The 2 million?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Councillor Bolton.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to say a big congratulations to the staff and everybody working on this, because when I read through this, I was quite blown away at just how much stuff is happening right through the whole valley, not just certainly in Yass, but also out in the surrounds. And I was really impressed with the amount of stuff going on and the amount of things coming through. So I just wanted to say thank you to all the people who put so many hours in as part of our staff into working on these things and applying for these grants, because I know myself, a few years ago, I attempted to apply for a grant, and I know it's a logistical nightmare. So to have so many coming in, I think is a massive hats off to all the people who've made that happen. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks, councillor. It's not only getting the grants, it's actually delivering on the ground.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor, probably this one goes to Lynette. I fully concur with the sentences in the financial implications about grants. Reminds me too, when I was standing for council, I did a bit of research, and there was this wonderful publication back then called The Valley Views. In this one, which is July 19, so I suppose the information is nearly about 4 years old, there's a sensational article. It says, do you understand where council gets funding from? And then it goes on and talks about the pie charts. So the pie charts are 40%, so that's state and federal funding. And then 27% was rates. And then another 17%, I think it is, which is rates and charges. No, 16%. So it's 40% funding from state and federal and 43% from rates and charges. I'm very well aware that Lynette and her team worked their absolute guts out and have done for years and years and years to get more funding. I'd like to have that sort of figure in my back pocket because I'm sure I speak for all councillors. The 3 R's of local government that used to be rates and roads and rubbish have pretty much morphed into 1 R, and that's roads. And we are forever getting hammered and people saying, well, why do we pay our rates? I'd really like to have an updated pie chart, if I could, to say, actually, you know, we're doing really well as a council. We're actually getting more funds from state, federal government and lesser reliance on rates and charges. But it'd just be really useful to know.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Councillor, I can let you know that the New Valley News will have a new table in it. It's already been worked on.
Oh, wow. Oh, and so this is having it come back?
Yes.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, with the rates and
Yeah, this one's good. Right, okay. Thank you very much.
You can be the patron.
You know this letter, Ms Abby, is on the front of that one.
So you've made an impact already.
Councillor
Sorry,
Butt.
one question and through you, Mr. Mayor, maybe to the CEO. Just in regards to the completion due date that's put next to some of these projects, when it goes out to tender, are the companies aware of these completion dates? I just think that for a few of them start June 23 and June 25. It seems like a 2-year period to build a shed. Yeah,
through you, Ms Mayor. Yes, I mean, their timeline's provided to us by the grant program. And obviously, one of the things that we try to do is make sure that we're delivering well within that timeframe. Usually, as part of the tendering process, we ask for their timelines in terms of what they can deliver when. That's something that is considered as part of the evaluation of all the tenders that we receive. Inevitably, with any project, there can be delays, and particularly if you're doing a construction job, weather's the problem, it can be the problem, and certainly that can be a reasonable delay. But usually, if that's the case, and we're jamming up against the absolute deadline of the grant program, provided we tell the grant provider in advance, usually there is some leeway that is given to us in terms of completing the expenditure. But generally speaking, we do ask, as soon as we've got the grant and we start the procurement process, is we ask for their timelines about what they can deliver within the time frame. Most of the time, it's well within the time limit that the grant places on us. So we do reasonably well, I think. And as I say, usually the delays are down to things that are not necessarily under our control, like weather. Or whereby, I think the last one I can remember was the grandstand at Walker Park. That went through a redesign as a result of the feedback from some of the users. So that consequently delayed that delivery of that project, but we finally when we got agreement, we did manage to deliver it, albeit a bit late.
Great, thank you.
Everyone happy? I'll put the motion, all those in favour? Those against, declare it carried. 610, the 2023 Seniors Festival Review. Very good report, some good feedback. Any comments? Move councillor Cameron.
I move it.
I think you're asking for a comment. Second, councillor Reid.
I'll speak to the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Cameron.
It was an excellent program. I participated in one activity and I thought it was very good. And you picked up on the criticisms that I think that the problem with the thing is that it could allow somebody to book everything. And I talked to one person who had booked 5 or 6, and I thought that was a bit unfair. So I don't know how you get around that if you're using Eventbrite or whichever organisation you're using. And also the event that I went to, there were a couple of no-shows, which, I think as soon as it's a no-show and there's no explanation, then there's a line through anything else that they put down for, So I don't know I'm not quite sure how you do it. There was 2 meals making in Maramaven Hotel, 2 meals.
Through the mayor, we had quite a few, I think every event we had at least a couple of people no show, and on some of the events we checked waiting lists. So, it's really unfair to those, and we did cop some criticism at the events about, you told me it was full and my friend couldn't come.
Yeah.
It was full.
Yeah.
Well, we're working on that.
I think it's a good idea.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Not, I'll put the motion, all those in favour? Those against, declare the motion carried. 611.
Through Mr Mayor, maybe 6, 11, 12, 13, 14 and 15 could be moved as a block. It's just to move them into a closed session.
Can we have a mover? Councillor Jones, councillor Potter.
We're moving them all now into closed session.
All right.
Okay, I'm not going to argue against.
Except one, do you want to talk to one?
Yeah, I want to talk to 6:15 for a minute.
Okay, so we'll just make it
We'll come back to it.
to 14 and then.
Unless you want me to speak to 6:15 now.
No, well, I think if you move it, if the movers and the seconder are happy about moving 11 through to 14, just do that as a block, and then you can just come back to 15 and just discuss that after it's been
Thank
moved
you.
and seconded.
Thank you.
Who's moved?
Jones and Hoffman.
Okay. Okay, have a debate. All those in favour? Those against, declare the motion carried. Councillor Cameron.
Oh, we're doing 6:15 now. Sorry, I misunderstood.
Craig Bill Precinct.
Yeah, okay. Well, with 6:15, I'm not sure whether I'm doing this the right way or not.
You'll soon find out.
Yeah.
It's full.
Do I-
It's all an error.
I have critics. Yes, I do. Look, just the thing that worries me about 6:15 going into confidential stuff. Look, it's totally appropriate. Okay, that's the first thing I'll say. It's totally appropriate. If you're talking about financial stuff, and institutions have told you what their financial position is, what they're going to suggest to you, etc. Fine. The problem that I'd just like to sort of raise, and I wasn't sure whether I could raise it in the other part of the 6.15 being confidential, is the issue of reporting back to the community what we're doing, and having a look back at April 22, for the minutes of April 22. We made decisions about Craig's Mill there, the business case, etc. And we had a timeline. Now, since then, really, if you go back through all the minutes of all the meetings, you'll see that we haven't really brought up anything about Craig's Mill in a formal sense. Now, I know there have been discussions, and that's probably kept us advised about where we might be heading. But the issue really is that we haven't as councillors and the council staff, we haven't really sort of been asking each other formally what's going on. And basically, since, if you have a look at the timeline in April 22, it's out of whack, it's completely gone, and we haven't done another timeline. We're still waiting for the DA. That's been in process for a year, which, you know, is a long time even for a DA. Sorry?
It's imminent.
It's imminent? Fabulous, thank you, Director. That's very good. So the DA's there, so we basically haven't really been talking to the community about what's happening. And I mentioned the other day, on Monday, that, you know, I think the community needs to know where we're at the current time, in terms of what we're going to try and do, and I just think the amount of money that we'll be looking for, which isn't mentioned in the recommendation coming from the confidential recommendation, will be a surprise to some people. So I'm probably talking about, I suppose, public relations. One of the things, thank you for telling me to wind up. Thank you, you don't have to give me the finger like that. What I'm trying to suggest is that we need to do a better, I'm worried that this may have a backlash on the development or the proposed.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, while the intention here is to discuss the financial matters associated with the delivery of this project, whatever's decided will be public once we move out of the closed session. So basically, the only things that will be retained within the closed session is the content of the report. Your decision is going to be very, very public, and it's going to, being very public, and depending on what decision you make, that would be a way of formally informing the community about the decision that you have made. So that would be the intent of what would happen. The issue to me is that in terms of what we're trying to do here is reflect what council told us in the briefing sessions, which was, okay, what does it cost us to do the whole lot as a single project? And what would it be if we staged it? How could we stage it? And what are the differences and what are the implications? So that information is part of the discussion and in the closed session in terms of what the options are available and which one would you prefer to go. If whatever decision you make, that will be recorded and be open for the public, and there's certainly no reason why we couldn't make sure that is communicated quite, because the community is very interested in this project. So I think that the community is interested to see what we're going to do rather than what we've done in the past, which is sit on plans and scratch our heads and not do anything. Or are we going to do something? Now, I'm not going to suggest what you should be doing. That's up to you guys when you deal with the financial implications. But whatever you decide, that will become public knowledge when we move back into open council. We can do some publicity around that and explain the reasons for that decision if that's acceptable to you. So that's where we're at.
And we really couldn't communicate with the public because we hadn't.
Got it.
We had nothing to communicate, working through it. And this was really only just now got to the point where council's got to make a decision.
I suppose I'll just show you, Mr. Mayor. I suppose I'm asking the question. If you look at the recommendations, I think, don't give that information. Like the current recommendations in the confidential briefings don't.
At the present time it is, but once you make your decision, whatever the decision is, it becomes public. Because you move out of closed session and the recommendation that you made it's a recommendation in the closed session. You come out and you either adopt it or you do something different. But the normal practice is you've had your debate in the closed session and then you endorse the recommendation coming out of the closed session.
Okay, well, I suppose I'm still, being stubborn here, which is unlike me. The recommendation doesn't have a figure in it.
Well, we'll get to that.
Okay, so we'll get to that in the confidential.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor John.
Before we head into confidential, I think it's important to state that on the shoulders of previous councillors in terms of council, we are at this point. Previous councils before my time secured the land, bought the pieces of the puzzle that was required to pull this together. I've seen.
Dropped a bit of flack for
Yes.
Still on.
And still are, correct. Part of the legacy of becoming a councillor is taking the baton and knowing what is going to be right for your community. And what we're about to consider is financing options. We already have the design and the DA imminently about to be approved. The community, the consultation has been done. And I don't have to tell you that we need a new library. It's so under what our community needs right now. We're projected to go to 36,000 people. And this is a project that will meet all those needs of our community beyond my children's generation and beyond. So I commend the report that we consider this. It is not lost on me the gravity of the decision ahead of us in terms of the commitment, the financial commitment, but I note that the nuance of this is staged financial staging. It's not to say that none of the components couldn't be done in the future, regardless of how we stage the finances. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor, I guess this one's to you, Chris. I was looking back at my notes of ARIC meeting of the 13th of July 22, and I remember at the end I made just a note about the project cost could be 30 million. I don't know whether it's a comment you made or James Stokedall, but and Councillor Cameron has mentioned a figure in previous briefings. Was that the one where we decided within Prago Mill we take out the lift or such the like?
It was, sorry, through you, Mr Mayor, what council asked us through the briefing sessions to look at was, is there an option to do some components of the development and defer other components to later or to the future without knowing when that might occur. So one of the options was to look at what were the essential bits, so the council administration, the library, the council chambers, and shoring up the Crago Mill so that it was preserved but not necessarily used. So it was basically secured,
So
make it safe.
Was left out.
Yeah, so the reuse of that building was not part of that discussion. It was to be pushed off to let's deal with that as part of a future stage. So at the moment you've really got a number of a couple of options. Basically, you can either proceed and as we originally intended, or you stage it in bite-sized chunks, knowing you'll do the first stage as quickly as you possibly can, but there will be no time frame about what you do down the track with the other stages. So the both are legitimate ways to proceed. And I guess the thing that councillors need to think about is, what would the community think of that? You know, they've seen the plans, they've seen what the ultimate is going to look like. You know, surprisingly to me, there was hardly any significant opposition to what you were proposing. So part of me thinks that maybe we've built the expectation up in the community that we deliver all of that, and with some certainty around that, rather than do bits of it and push the other off to an unknown time frame. So that's really the choices that you have, and that's something, as I said, that you need to have that discussion about how we finance this in a closed session, because we've got proposals from different institutions, and that is commercial and confidence information, that hopefully that information gives you the benefit of being able to make a decision about which way you go. Do the time job or stage it.
Okay. I think Councillor Councillor Jones, Councillor Butler, seconded. No further discussion. We'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against, declare the motion carried. We're now in closed session.
Minutes of the Country Mayor's Association.
Oh, sorry.
9.1.
1.1. Someone like to move the receipt? Councillor Popham, Councillor Ruth. Any comments?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I could direct this to Chris. I was just reading the minutes, and I'm aware that no one from our fellow council was there at this meeting, but Scott Phillips, who apparently is CEO of LG New South Wales, spoke about, firstly, he alluded to something called the councillor conduct framework. Can you tell me what that is?
Through to Mr. Mayor, it's basically a review that's going on to look at effectively the code of conduct. There's been quite a long review process with extensive consultation. Some of the things that we were looking at is that the idea of the general manager being the gatekeeper to code of conduct complaints puts the general manager in a bit of a no-win situation.
Sorry.
So the idea, I mean, that's one of the elements that we've actually put forward, is to say, really, at the end of the day, general managers should be taken out of the equation. The councillors appoint the general manager, expect the general manager to work on a program. It's a sort of a no-win situation if there is a code of conduct matter and the general manager has to deliver a ruling or present a recommendation that may not go well, especially if they're coming up to a performance review or something along those lines. So look, there's some issues there. The other thing is that a lot of people have been saying the code of conduct is a bit of a toothless tiger where there is poor behaviour. And I agree with that. I also agree that the practice of the Office of Local Government is to wait for things to fall apart before they intervene. And I actually think that if there's a red light that something might be a problem, they should go there and try and sort it out sooner rather than later, rather than waiting for it to fall apart and then try to pick up the pieces after that. If you can intervene earlier, there is an opportunity to get a council back on track if that is the issue. So that's what the local government New South Wales have been talking about. They've made their own representations. They've also asked councils about what their positions are, and they've obviously tried to weave their way through, the 120 odd submissions from various councils about putting forward a view that they believe is a consensus of local government. We've made our own representations as well to these reviews, and so that's what he would have been talking about at that meeting. Because we've got a position, didn't see the need for us to, that's information we can get from the local government of New South Wales as part of their monthly briefings that they give us or send us out.
Thank you. And then the second question is that Scott Phillips chap talked about, and I just want to give us a quick update, bit of an overview. He talked about IPART review of the rate peg methodology. So,
quick update on that. The general managers group of the Canberra Region Joint Organisation met with the chair of IPART about 4 weeks ago now, and we, or the general managers, had already made a submission to the review of IPART. Basically, and to their credit, the IPART basically said that when you've got predictable circumstances that, inflation's at a particular level and it's very consistent and wages are consistent, that the methodology used is quite useful. But what a lot of people were saying is, and IPART agreed with this, is the fact that when the situation becomes more volatile, such as what we're experiencing at the moment with interest rates going up or coming down or staying or whatever it is, the current methodology they're using to work out what the rate peg is not particularly useful. So one of the things that was discussed was some different alternate approaches about how this might be dealt with, which, again, to the credit of IPART, I think that they took on board some of the comments that were coming from the general managers about the methodology and about how the approach would be, and were certainly indicating that there was a preparedness to consider changing the approach. So, again, at this stage, they haven't finalised their work, they finalise their review. That will become public, and I guess we'll have another go at that once we see what they're thinking at this stage. But at this stage, it was quite impressive that they actually came down. There was a few things that I wasn't particularly happy about in terms of the way they. So you had to be at the meeting to gain the information. We did say that for a big geographic area like us, that perhaps some people who would be interested in participating, it would be useful if they could participate remotely. The short answer to that was no, which eliminated Lynette, for instance, in being able to attend the meeting remotely. I was fortunate because I was already there for another meeting. But that, again, it's their show, and they make the rules, and we either follow them or we protest. And so it was easier to follow the rules on the day, I think. But yeah, they collected and collated a lot of the information from the discussion, and obviously that they will be feeding that into their deliberations about what should or shouldn't happen in terms of rate pegging and the methodology used. So hopefully we'll get something soon, and my understanding is it goes to Cabinet. Cabinet's got to endorse it to be released, but generally speaking, there will be an opportunity for local government to have a say on whether we think it's a good idea or a good outcome or a poor outcome.
And we're stuck with it either way. Rate pegging's here to stay. I think it's been an abject failure myself, but there's no government of any complexion that will admit that.
Yeah. But I think it was very clear that they said that look at the methodology, but rate pegging, there will be, it'll be here to stay. Yeah.
Council of conduct, democracy is a very tender violet. It relies on compliance, much the same as the football game. You get one red again, it can bring a council undone quick smart, particularly if they get one or two supporters and a few people in the public gallery. Before you know it, you're heading down the gurgler.
It wouldn't happen in Yass Valley.
Well,
Not the
That's true.
class
Look,
of councillors.
It's happening in Victoria,
yeah, look,
strange things.
there's some strange things happening down in Victoria, and I think that some of them are, some that, you know, it's about corrupt conduct as much as anything else from what I've seen. But look, to say it doesn't happen, it does happen in New South Wales. Wingegarabee has gone into administration. They've had their elections suspended. Murray River. So there's lots of councils that have been in administration.
there was a walkout at Shell Harbour last week for Labor. Councillors walked out of the meeting when they had to get their own way. Unfortunately, they left a quorum in place, yeah. And that's probably why they stepped it down.
Well, I can tell you now, when the walkout happened at Goulburn, there wasn't a quorum. That was over their emergency pipeline, and there was within 24 hours there was a visit from the Office of Local Government to read the Riot Act to the council. So again, that was probably a good example of where they intervened before it became too much of a problem. And I think that's what that should be the Office of Local Government's reason for existing, is to put the fires out before they become a bushfire. You know, that's step in and sort it out. So yeah, it's in my time here, it's been quite collegiate with the councillors. That while there's been differences of opinion and people have vigorously debated for and against, I think it's done in a very professional manner here, and I must admit it's quite pleasing. I have worked in councils where it's been very dysfunctional. It is not fun. It's not enjoyable. It's time consuming. It's exhausting, and it consumes a lot of resources for not much outcome.
Thanks very much, councillors, working so well together.
We're not in confidential yet.
No, we're good.
We're not there yet.
You just need to move the minutes of the Country Mayors Association meeting.
I'm all for them. Let's go.
Let's do it. Declare the motion
Didn't even look.
We're now into confidential.
Need a move and a second.
And I have,
Councillor Jones and Councillor Potter. No discussion? All those in favour? Those against? Declare the motion carried.
We'll just wait till we shut down.